Welcome to another edition of Ask Isaiah. It's your host Isaiah Rhodes, and on today's episode, I have Demetrius Phillips with me as we break down this 2018 NCAA tournament. Now, so far, we are here in the Sweet 16, and everyone's bracket is up in arms, upheaval, thrown in the garbage, 0%. If anybody tells me the bracket is right at this point, they're complete liars. So we're just going to break down what has happened specifically to the Big East as another number one seed has fallen. Xavier lost to Florida State. The Seminoles closed out that game on a 19-5 run over the final 6 minutes. And what makes it so interesting is that Florida State makes their first Sweet 16 since 2011. Trent Forrest came off the bench and had an exceptional game. 13 points, 5 rebounds, 4 steals. That's one game. Then another upset we saw was Texas A&M completely shellacking University of North Carolina, 86-65. And what made that game so disgusting to watch offensively was that UNC shot 8 of 37 from the three-point line. 8 of 37. They shot 33% from the field. And Joel Berry, their senior guard, probably on his way to the NBA, shot 7 of 17 from the field, 21 points, but he shot 2 of 10 from three. I mean, the Aggies just completely took it to UNC on the boards, 50-36 in the rebounding edge. And then on top of that, they went to the free throw line 21 times, making 14. UNC only made 7. So, Demetrius, that's just 2 games. We have other games as well, but just overall from the tournament, what are you seeing?
Seeing some great basketball. Great basketball. Like I said before, there's so much parity in college basketball right now, and that's what we're getting these first 2 rounds. Also heading into the Sweet 16, we're still going to continue to see great matchups.
Right.
I've always had a bias towards the East Coast. East Coast basketball is premier to everybody else, and we saw that when Syracuse was able to take down Michigan State.
Oh, I wanna piggyback off that point because in our previous podcast we spoke about Tom Izzo and how you felt at times, specifically when he's getting a lot of hype in terms of his team and the build-up, that the teams don't necessarily live up to expectations. Now, in that particular game, that was a slugfest. You had 2 great coaches in terms of their aura, Jim Boeheim for Syracuse, Tom Izzo for Michigan State. But in that game, Tyus Battle came up huge. Scored 17 points, 4 of 15 from the field. But he had a huge jumper down the stretch to really get the edge to Syracuse, which pushed them forward for the rest of the game. And he was 9 of 10 from the field. More than anything, though, that 2-3 zone that Jim Boeheim is notorious for in Syracuse forced Michigan State to shoot under 26% from the field. And more than anything, they held Miles Bridges, their standout sophomore, to 4 of 18. So what did you see in that particular game? Well, from a foresight perspective, what did you see that led you to say that Michigan State wasn't as highly heralded as they should have been?
They had a great regular season, but they also burned out in the Big Ten tournament. They lost in, I think, the second round to Michigan. I wasn't expecting that from them. I would expect it for them to at least be in the final.
Right.
But also, too, in terms of coaching, we saw bad coaching from Tom Izzo because the 2-3, you want to be the 2-3 by penetrating the zone, getting the ball in the middle, making them pack the zone in, and then force kickouts, and your guys are able to make shots. But we didn't see that from Michigan State. They were able to get the ball in the middle of the zone in the beginning, but they went away from that throughout the course of the game. And, that mixed with just a bad shooting night, led to the demise of Michigan State from the tournament.
Well, just to piggyback off of that, I think those are great points in terms of how Michigan State was solely focused on shooting the 3. There were a lot of the times where they had offensive opportunities, especially on the offensive rebound, and could have went straight up for a layup, but they consistently kicked it back out, trying to utilize clock, but then we'll pull up for a 3. To that point, Michigan State out-rebounded Syracuse 51-30. So if you think in a slugfest like that, if you out-rebound a team by 21 rebounds, you should have won the game. And I think more than anything, Syracuse finished that game on a 16-9 run, and a lot of that had to do with how Battle showed great poise down the stretch and was able to create offense just enough to keep Michigan State off balance.
It's a game of adjustments.
Right.
You know, you haven't been shooting well the entire game from the 3-point line. You got to change something up. You gotta make some change. You lost by 2, so I mean, maybe a change here, a change there for a possession or 2 could have been the difference in the game. You know, you didn't lose by 10, you didn't lose by 15. You know, you didn't have to scrap the whole game plan, but a few changes here or there, or just going away from the 3-point shot. And, you know, like the saying goes, live by the 3, die by the 3. And Michigan State, you know, they died. And, you know, I blame Izzo, you know, and he said it himself. He said, don't blame the players, blame me. And
right.
that's a route he's taken a few times, I've heard, actually. So it's great he's able to put the onus on his shoulders. But, you know, like I said before, you know, I just expect more from him, being the attention that he gets, the notoriety he has, being one of the top tier coaches in all of college basketball. So, I mean, for me, that's just another, you know, strike against him for me. So, you know, hopefully, you know, they'll come back strong. And I'm pretty sure they'll come back strong. You know, he's a great coach, don't get me wrong, but in games like these are the games for me that matter. You know, regular season where you're playing more so inferior opponents than, you know, superior. You know, you're in a great conference, but, you know, how many of the teams made the NCAA tournament? Maybe 3 or 4. And otherwise, you know, you're a great coach. You're a great coach, but again, when you play at Syracuse or Boeheim, you got to be ready to throw all the marbles on the table. You know, you can't put all your eggs in one basket, and that's what they did, relying on the 3-point shot. Because, like you said, they were able to out-rebound Syracuse.
Right.
And Michigan State, they do have horses on the inside, so I think it should have been more of an inside battle than them trying to win the game from downtown.
I think to that point about 3-point shooting, because we've seen specifically with Michigan State and North Carolina's game wasn't as close as Michigan State's was, but you had North Carolina shooting 31 threes, and then you had Michigan State shooting 37. When you see that type of focus on the 3-point line, especially in the college game, where do you think the game is going in terms of how the game is being played? I mean, you want to look to the pro level and see how it's evolving, but a lot of the times the college players that are taking these threes aren't at that skill level yet. So you might think that, okay, it's a wide open shot, but Steph Curry range and Joel Berry range is not the same. Not to say that Berry is not a great player, but there's a time and a place for certain shots. So how do you feel the direction of the game is going, specifically in college basketball?
We've seen for the past, let's say, 7 to 10 years, the marginalization of the big man position. You know, Golden State, the defending champions, their big man is, you know, Draymond Green, about 6'5", 6'6", and, you know, he himself shoots a fair amount of threes. So, of course, in college basketball, where you think there'll be a little more structure due to the tradition of the game, also coaches trying to keep young men in line with what they want to run, you know, because of production and also ego of the coach and, you know, what they feel like fits their system and what they want to run. You would think that it would be less 3-point shooting and more, you know, mid-range or post. But, you know, basketball as a whole has went away from that.
Right.
And this is what we're going to see. We're going to see games with, you know, in 40 minutes of, you know, actual game time, teams are shooting 37, 40 3-point attempts. You know, that's almost, you know, basically saying for every minute of the game, every time down, you're shooting a 3-point shot.
Right.
And, you know, unless you're having an excellent day, you know, the sun shines on you, you know, you're going to have a tough time winning if you're shooting that many shots. And, you know, you got to make, if you're going to shoot 10 3-pointers, you want to make 5 or 6, you know, as a team, you know, 2 for 12s and 5 for 20s, that's not going to win you basketball games at the college level. So,
A lot has been made also, is specifically you mentioned UMBC and how they were able to upset the Virginia Cavaliers, the number one overall seed in the tournament, 31-2 coming into the tournament. They completely took Virginia out of their game and up in the number one seed prior to Xavier. And then we saw the Buffalo Bulls knock off Arizona after they had a tumultuous season, were able to come back and win the Pac-12 tournament. A lot has been made about how some of these smaller schools who have experienced players have been able to beat some big-name schools with younger players. So can you speak to how the experience of some of these smaller schools who have juniors and seniors have been able to translate into wins against big schools?
Like I say, time heals everything. You've been a college player for 2, 3, maybe even 4 years compared to a guy that's been a college player 1 year or a few months, maybe 7, 8 months max. By the time we are here in March, you've probably been a college player for 6, 7 months.
Right.
So you have the repetitions down. You have what it takes to perform on a daily basis. You've ran your plays thousands of times over the course of 2, 3, 4 years. So when you get in these big game situations, experience, should be the difference. Some teams are younger, but they're more talented, and you do see those teams prevail in some instances. But where experience lacks, experience will win, and that's what we see from a Buffalo. Compared to Arizona, they have guys that are, as soon as they lose, they're declaring for the NBA draft.
Right.
These Buffalo guys, when in previous years, when they lose, they're already thinking about postseason training, summertime. What can we do to get back? What can we do to get further? So you have guys, as soon as they come in, they're ready to leave, and there also spells the sense of urgency that some of these kids have. That when they come, they know their last game is their last game, and they're going to greener pastures.
Right.
But for a lot of these kids in the smaller schools, they know they're coming back. They know that they're going to be pushed to work on and refine their games and stuff like that. So then you have a consequence like this where you see a Buffalo or you see a UMBC knocking off a higher seeded team or just a better physical or better talented team, because they have the longevity, they have the proper mileage that you need as a college player, as a professional, in terms of experience. And, just a matter of time sometimes that the talent that you do have playing for a small school or being a small school, it will come out to show itself. And
I think more than anything, specifically to that longevity and understanding in-game situations, when I'm looking at some of these games, I'm seeing these teams going like long stretches of runs where the opposition is lacking in scoring. Going to the Buffalo game, it was a 60-55 game with 12 minutes remaining, and Buffalo allowed just 2 buckets against the Arizona team with DeAndre Ayton, Raleigh Atkins, and the other players. 2 baskets over the next 8 minutes to go on a 19-5 run to really open that game up. Then we could go to the UMBC Virginia game, and Virginia throughout the season shot 39% from 3 all year. In that particular game against UMBC, shooting 4 of 22 from 3, and their UMBC's Jarius Lyles scored a game-high 28 points, 9 of 11 from the field, 7 of 9 from the free throw line. Just a focus on the efficiency. Like those type of things that you're seeing from Buffalo, that you're seeing from that you saw from UMBC, they ended up getting eliminated by Kansas State. But just to be able to put those type of stretches together in this high pressure moments, where do you get that from? How you mentioned the training and the preparation even after the season ends, but in terms of players who've played at high level moments, I'm sure DeAndre Ayton is preparing for the league, so he should have that type of sense of urgency too. Like, what was the separation?
It's mental. It's also personality. like I said before, you have guys that know they're coming back to school. They know that they have to prepare for the next college season.
Mm.
So their coach might even be hard on them because he knows that they're coming back to play for him. But a guy, DeAndre Ayton, his coach knows, Sean Miller knows that he's not coming back next season. So after this game here, after this last game in which they lost to Buffalo, there's nothing else he can say to him.
Right.
It's no more cultivating. It's no more nurturing that he can do. He can say, you have my wishes and I wish you the best, and you should head to the NBA. So that in itself is the difference that even coaches at a certain point that they have to stop coaching these guys because they won't have them next year.
It's definitely a slippery slope, especially when you mentioned cultivating. You want to maximize the group that you have, but it's such a small window. That's why I have such admiration and respect for what John Calipari does with every school he goes to. Right now he's at the University of Kentucky, but similar to UMass and Memphis, he's always known that his players have a small window with him, and he's trying to maximize their ability as much as he can, but understands that the next wave is always preparing for the draft. And I think we spoke about University of Kentucky too, about how in particular this young team, their expectations weren't to go as far, but now they're in the Sweet 16 with an opportunity to really make a run, specifically with how many teams have already been knocked off. As we go through some of the scores at this point, we mentioned UMBC. They ended up losing to Kansas State 50-43, so they still played extremely well. Buffalo, after beating Arizona, lost to Kentucky 95-75. And I want to mention Loyola Chicago. They've been able to make an exceptional run. They've played exceptional defense their first two games of the tournament. First holding Miami to 62 points, and then coming right back and getting their 30th win of the season. Dante Ingram knocked down a key shot, and then Clayton Custer came back and hit a huge jumper to push them to the Sweet 16. Just explain what you're seeing from Loyola Chicago. They shot 50% against Tennessee and held. And for them to shoot 50% against Tennessee, that's the first non-conference opponent that Tennessee allows to shoot 50%. So what are you seeing from Loyola Chicago?
Basically just a matter of a good team playing great at the right time.
Right. They're an 11th seed. So this is not to cut you off, but this is the fifth consecutive season that an 11th seed has gone to the Sweet 16.
Right, because they're in the Missouri Valley Conference. Not a bad conference, pretty good conference, great basketball, great players come out of that conference and play professionally, whether it's NBA or Europe. But, like most college coaches, they want their guys to peak at the right time.
Right.
And most oftentimes that right time is the end of the season in the NCAA tournament, headed to the Sweet 16, like at Loyola Chicago.
Right.
They have a little chip on their shoulder. They have some luck on their side. So they're executing. They're not letting the spotlight get the best of them. They're playing Tennessee, which is a very good SEC team.
Right.
And they're just staying within themselves and executing. I'm pretty sure to how the coach expects them to, and they're just taking it in the game at a time.
And in situations like this, specifically when you look at how teams have been upset, you look at other teams who have had that bullseye on their back, Villanova, Duke University. Teams have made it a point to dominate their matchup so that they don't have an upset similar to what Tennessee did. Even though Tennessee's game was close, many would consider that an upset. Obviously, Arizona was upset, Virginia. So you have these other teams that similar to what Virginia faced. They don't want to even put themselves in that position. So how does a team like a Duke University and Villanova continue to stay sharp, knowing that everyone is coming for the head?
Having been a player, been in those type of environments and locker rooms, the coach wants those guys to go out, and as soon as the ball is tipped, put your foot on the opposing team necks.
Right.
Letting the game go close after 5 minutes, after 10 minutes, halftime. Teams go in the locker room at halftime with confidence.
Right.
They say, we're in it, we're down 5, we're tied, or we're up 5. Then these teams just get confidence, and they come out and they can either take you to the finish, or they can deliver a knockout punch like we saw UMBC do with Virginia. And it's ironic because, Virginia hadn't allowed opponent to score over 70 points all season.
Right.
UMBC was able to score 74.
Right.
So
and hold them to 54.
Hold them to 54. So, Duke, like we saw in the first two games of the tournament, they came out early, got a lead, and cruised from there. They didn't relinquish any leads. They didn't, play poorly. They didn't play down to the level of their competition, which we see.
Right.
Although every team is in the tournament is, pretty good to decent, it does happen. But
right. You kind of look ahead to your next opponent as opposed to really locking in on what you have to do.
Right, and they were able to beat Rhode Island decisively.
Yeah, most definitely.
That
particular score was a rout in 87-62 score.
Mm-hmm. And they were able to beat Iona decisively.
Right.
So, everybody thought in the Sweet 16 that Duke would face, I think, Kansas. It was, or the potential to face Kansas or
Michigan State. That potential matchup would have been Duke and Michigan State. Right.
So, they were able to take it one game at a time, and now they're facing Syracuse, who we know upset Michigan State, but during the regular season, Duke handily beat Syracuse.
Mm.
So, if they, continue to handle business, then they'll be on to the Elite Eight.
Now, in turn, you mentioned a matchup with Syracuse. Obviously, that's another high-profile coach matchup, both respected and highly regarded throughout the game.
Mm-hmm.
When you have a Coach K who's been able to win 5 national championships, now Jim Boeheim only has 1, but he's been able to push teams to multiple Final Four opportunities, and this is his 23rd. This is his 23rd Sweet 16 appearance. When you have these type of matchups, who do you think has the edge?
Without being a fan of Duke, I actually love both coaches. They're great friends, great basketball histories and things of that nature. But, knowing Duke and, since Syracuse is coming to the ACC versus Duke, they haven't had a good time, when they go head to head. I'm pretty sure Duke wins that matchup handily. And like we saw this season, Duke, I think was able to sweep the season series with them.
Right.
But we haven't seen the same Syracuse since they left the Big East in a sense of totality. So, I think, both teams will be ready and both teams are well coached, but I just give Duke the upper hand in the matchup. But maybe, you might have some issue. Maybe you can get Grayson Allen rattled. Maybe his inability to lead the freshmen. And, Syracuse finds a way to stay in it and keep their zone effective against the shooters of Duke. And, Duke also has superior NBA talent in their front line.
Yeah, most definitely. You have Wendell Carter, who's really been able to come on. And you mentioned being able to peak at the right time. Wendell Carter has really come on in the first 2 rounds. Marvin Bagley is always a presence. He's a potential lottery pick. But to see what Wendell Carter has been able to do in these first 2 rounds has really been surprising, specifically because he's trying to, leverage his way into the NBA as well.
Right. And Duke is a little deeper than they usually are. They usually go 7, maybe 8 deep. You see them go maybe 9 or 10 sometimes. But also, they've, handled their opponents early, so they're able to reach into their bench a little more and get their starters some rest. So, rest and relaxation and, durability is all key, especially in a tournament of this format. You're playing every other day, and then you get, 3 or 4 days off. You want to be able to go into your bench and rest guys.
Right. As we wrap up, we just want to give you guys a preview of the Sweet 16 matchups. You have Kansas State versus Kentucky. That should be a good game, specifically because we want to see how Coach Cal is able to really maximize this particularly young team. Kansas State is coming off of a 50-43 victory, as I mentioned, against UMBC. Then you have Loyola Chicago versus Nevada. Now, Nevada was able to come back against Cincinnati, a huge comeback, being down 22 points and able to overcome a 22-point deficit and defeat Cincinnati 75-73. Cincinnati must be feeling it to be up by 22 and you look like you're cruising. You mentioned it on various occasions throughout this vlogcast already. To when you take your foot off the pedal and start looking ahead, that's what Cincinnati did in that particular situation. And it's unfortunate because when you're that close, you already see it after a loss. The tears and the pain that comes with the loss. It's unfortunate, but also you have Florida State. They're going to face Gonzaga, and then you have Michigan. They're going to take on Texas A&M. On the other side of the bracket, you have Villanova. They'll end up facing West Virginia. Now, that should be a good matchup. We mentioned Jay Wright on various occasions and how he's been able to bring Villanova to the forefront of college basketball. He's going against a legend in Bob Huggins, who always has his teams ready for the NCAA tournament. So when you look at that particular matchup, Villanova and West Virginia, what are you seeing from there?
I see a very good slugfest brewing.
Right.
An old Big East matchup. So two well-coached teams. But Villanova a more pretty team, a prettier style.
Much more explosive in terms of
offensively.
Right.
West Virginia, they're going to play ugly. They can get up and down. They're going to defend. You might see some pressure from Virginia. They also have some veterans, but both teams very well coached and very well disciplined. So I think this one should go down to the wire.
In the next game on that bracket, you have Purdue versus Texas Tech. Purdue was able to outlast Butler 76-73 in a very close game, and then Texas Tech was able to outlast Florida 69-66. So we'll see how both teams respond in this particular matchup. Being in close games in the tournament only boosts your confidence because you know how to execute down the stretch. So both teams should be well ready for that. And then you have Kansas, who's the number 1 seed, versus Clemson. So we'll have to see how Kansas responds after coming within inches of almost losing to Seton Hall. That was a very close game. Angel Delgado and Kadeem Carrington really put that game on their backs for Seton Hall. Unfortunately, they fell short. Kadeem Carrington scored 30 points, and Angel Delgado scored 25 points and had 23 rebounds in both of their final games at Seton Hall. So when you look at what Kansas will have to face, I think in that Clemson game, we'll have to see if they're able to, as you say, get out to an early lead and kind of maintain the momentum from there.
Clemson is going to be ready. They face North Carolina, and then they face a Duke. They face a NC State. They face a Syracuse twice a year. So they're going to be ready for Kansas. And, I'm pretty certain that Clemson won't be afraid of the moment. So I look for a tight game. I may look for upset, but I'm almost certain that Kansas does have enough to pull it out. They have some great players. They have a great coach in Bill Self. So I'm going to pick Kansas with this one, but it should be close.
Should be close. We will see. After everything we've seen in these last couple of weeks, I'm pretty certain that the word upset is in front of everybody's brain at this point. The seeds really are out the window. If you're at this point in the tournament, you can compete with anybody, and we should have some exciting basketball down the stretch. I'm Isaiah Rhodes. This is Ask Isaiah for my guest, my partner, Demetrius Phillips. We will be back to give you more wrap-ups from the NCAA Tournament 2018. Ask Isaiah. Next time.